Hey there, drone fans. Rick here again from Drone Valley. In today's clip, I'd like to cover the brand new Skydio R2 drone that was announced a few days ago. Now, you can't actually buy this drone yet, but you can go to their website and place a pre-order, and they're going to start shipping these the end of November. So they're pretty close to shipping right now, but I don't have one. I wish I had one here so I could show you it. I could compare it to other drones, but I'm on the list like everybody else, and I placed that pre-order primarily based on the technology behind what this drone can do. Because anytime a new product comes out, I like to put myself in the shoes of the average consumer, and I'm looking for a few things. I'm looking at what this product provides compared to other products in the market. Is there anything really unique in this product that I need as a consumer? And more importantly, is it worth the price they're charging for the product? So I've used all those sort of criteria to judge this product, and I have to tell you, I've done a ton of research on the back end because I'm an engineer, I'm a nerd, I want to make sure I understand exactly what the drone can provide. And they've really invented quite a few unique features inside this drone you won't find on other drones on the market today. Essentially what you're buying with this product is a drone that does two things insanely well. It can track an object, and it also can avoid other objects. So when it's tracking one object, it's smart enough to know that's my target. All the other stuff out here is noise that I have to avoid. And that's not an easy task because it involves a lot of high performance computing. It involves a lot of artificial intelligence, tons of programming, learning algorithms. You're going to hear about neural networks. So we're getting into pretty advanced robotic topics. But the guys from Skydio have really nailed it with this product. Now I looked at their Rev 1 product, and it looked like, to me, a little bit of a prototype. It was really large. It was kind of cumbersome to carry it around. Although the concept was incredibly interesting, I was waiting for the secondary product to come out, the Rev 2 to come out that was smaller, more portable, more consumer oriented. And I'll tell you, man, I think they've nailed it with this product. And the one thing that still blows me away, and I'll talk about this a lot during the clip, I can't believe the price of this. It's under $1,000. Now, a drone like this, I probably shouldn't say this, could easily command twice that price. With the functions and features that are built into it, this could be an $1,800, $2,000 drone. So the fact that they can release it to the market with all the advanced features, and more importantly, the technology they've jammed into this tiny little drone for $1,000 is pretty amazing to me. So needless to say, the minute I did the research and understood what they were doing with the drone, and it wasn't all hype, and there was really core technology behind it that enabled these feature sets, I placed the pre-order. So I'm waiting just like everybody else for the box to arrive on the front porch, and I promise you once it gets here, I'll tear it apart and I'll compare it to all the other drones on the market. But the reason I'm so excited about this is I think fundamentally, all the other companies out there have done a pretty good job of obstacle avoidance, which is the basic functionality of artificial intelligence to sort of know that I'm tracking somebody or know that I'm flying and something's in my way. Don't crash into the wall or the tree or the building. And I think they've done a great job with that. They've used cameras to do that. They've used IR sensors to do that. DJI was one of the leading edge companies that gave us sort of a 360-degree bubble of protection for crash avoidance. But crash avoidance and autonomous flight are really two different things. And what the Skydio R2 is doing is combining sort of an active tracking technology for you as a person or an object with the autonomous flight. So it's not only avoiding things, it's figuring out a way to get through that tiny little hole to keep chasing you. It's looking for a way to play tag with you, for lack of a better concept, and follow you through this complex environment of trees and bushes and buildings and all kinds of other obstacles out there. So I think for a lot of people that are out in the active sport community, if you're a surfer, if you're a bike rider, if you're a motorcycle guy, or you just want to throw a drone up in the air and have it follow you when you go about your daily activities, this is the kind of drone you want to own. So let me get into some of the specs first, then I'll talk about really what makes this drone so brilliant underneath, because they're using a lot of off-the-shelf components to build this thing, but the technology they're using is on the leading edge of artificial intelligence, Internet of Things type of technologies, advanced robotics concepts. You're going to hear the term neural networks. And again, as an engineer, I study a lot of these concepts, and they're used in a lot of very high-end equipment out there on the market. You don't find these things in a consumer drone, especially at this price point of $1,000. So let's get into the specs, then I'll talk about some of the features that are inherent in this drone that come from the technology under the hood. First, we'll take a look at the flight specs for the new Skydio R2, because anytime I'm considering a new quad, there are 4 metrics relative to flight that I need to understand when comparing it to other quads that I'm flying. And those are things like, how far can I fly it? How fast can I fly it? How long will it stay up in the air on a single battery? And probably most importantly, how does it fix its position in space? Does it use GPS, GLONASS, maybe a combination of the two, or some other exotic technology like VIO? And that's really important to me because I need to understand how that drone knows exactly where it is in a 3-dimensional environment, and also where I am as the pilot, so in case something goes wrong, it gets back to me. The good news is that the Skydio R2 checks all these boxes. So it can fly 2.2 miles away based on an enhanced Wi-Fi controller, And that's important because even though that's well beyond my visual line of sight, being an older guy, I probably can see a couple of thousand feet at best, and I'm not going to fly beyond visual line of sight, but knowing I can fly beyond visual line of sight means I've got a strong enough signal that when I'm flying in close, I don't have to worry about interference if I'm flying near trees or I'm flying near buildings or there's Wi-Fi interference in the area. It just guarantees me that I've got a rock solid signal, that I'm not going to have any issues with the quad, talking to the controller and being able to control that quad. It can fly incredibly fast, so it flies 36 miles per hour, which is impressive on its own, and that would be wonderful if I was using a controller to fly it that fast. But the thing that really blew me away is it can fly 36 miles an hour in autonomous mode. And you have to stop and drink that in for a second, because what that means is it's not only able to track a subject at that speed, which is hard enough on its own, but in addition to that, it has to keep track of all the interference and obstacles and noise around that object it's tracking and plan a flight path around or through those objects. And the amount of data it's collecting from the 6 cameras and processing and making those split-second decisions is absolutely incredible. And that's where this sort of artificial intelligence comes in, to give it the ability to learn. It's got this neural network built in to actually learn well in advance of where it's going, all the obstacles that are coming up, and already in its own mind planning a path around those if I decide to ride my bike along that path between the trees. So that's pretty incredible to me. So 36 miles an hour autonomous flight. It'll do 23 minutes of flight time, which is about average for a quad this size. It's no shorter really than any of the quads in this price range. 23 minutes is plenty. The battery pops out really easy. You can charge a couple of batteries up and swap them out and fly a little longer. In addition to that, it uses both GPS and GLONASS for fixing its position, which is exactly what I'm looking for. I like VIO as well. VIO is great if you're flying in the house because it doesn't need GPS at that point and keep really stable. But VIO is not great if I'm flying really long distances to sort of learn and create a map of where it's been flown and where it's going to fly back to the home position. So I like VIO as sort of an add-on. I don't like it as the primary location, if you will, for the drone. So GPS and GLONASS are built into the quad, which is really, really nice. So all 4 of those stand up against all the quads that are in the market today. Maybe they're a little less than some, a little more than others, but overall it's a very, very solid quad from a flight perspective. Now we'll talk about the camera specs, and this is where it gets a little bit interesting, because looking at the raw specifications, you might be inclined to say, wow, that's not that impressive. But let me tell you why it is impressive. So for starters, the raw specifications are that it's using a Sony 1/2.3 sensor, which can capture 12.3 megapixel pictures. It'll capture 4K 60 frames per second video with HDR, and it does that at 100 megabytes a second. Now the reason that's important, because if you're thinking just about the sensor, a 1/2.3 sensor was out on the Mavic Pro, and that was well over 2 years ago. And I've picked on a couple other quad companies, Autel being one of them, with the Evo product, that used that 1/2.3 sensor. And I said, man, that's old technology. Why aren't they upgrading to a 1-inch sensor? There's 2 things to keep in mind when you're talking about sensors. The first has to do with the size of the sensor, right? That's super important. So obviously a 1/2.3 is not as good as a 1-inch sensor, but that's only true if you can process that information at a high speed. So having a 1/2.3 sensor that can move 100 megabits a second through a processor, through this really exotic engine that can process that information and give you buttery smooth video out the other side with all the information preserved, is really impressive. And they do that on this quad by using a brand new product called the Qualcomm QCS605 chipset. Now I'm going to talk a lot about that in a minute, but at the core of it, the sensor's the same as everybody else's. This chipset isn't the same. And really marrying up that sensor with this chipset gives you incredibly good HDR video on the back end, 4K 60 frames a second. They've also built in a 3-axis stabilized gimbal, which is all you need when you're up in the sky. You want to make sure that if the quad is moving around and zipping through the trees and stuff, that the camera stays locked on that person and gives you the stabilization you want. Now, the other thing they did, which was really cool with the quad, it's one of the first ones I've seen in the sort of prosumer space that has a different propeller system. They've got on the front of the quad, the props are underneath, and on the back of the quad, they're over top. So you've got kind of inverted quad props on the front, and you've got the top props on the back, which is interesting because it's not intuitive that you're able to flip those around without changing some of the programming inside to actually compensate for the weight and balance and acceleration needed in that 3D space. So they've had a lot of challenges here. I mean, it's not just making it a better camera, using that higher processing speed, using the Qualcomm chip on the back end, it's flipping the props, but then on top of it, they've done some amazing things with their obstacle avoidance, and I'll talk about that next. They call it autonomy, and I really believe that it is autonomous, because if you've seen the videos of the R1 and some of the videos of the R2, this thing is hard to shake. It's scary. It's like a flying robot that locks on you and isn't going to lose you. And it's going to stay with you, and you can travel through all these wild environments and around trees and around paths and underneath bushes and stuff, and it's going to find a path through there. And it does that with the 6 additional cameras that are on the outside of the quad. So with the quad itself, it's got the 1/2.3 sensor on the front that captures the video that you're actually focusing on, your object, but it's also got 6 navigational cameras. They've got 3 in the top, there's 1 in the center of the body, and 2 in front of each arms on the top. And then on the bottom, they've got 1 in the center of the body, and they've got 2 on the back arms of the quad as well. And between those 6 cameras, they're actually capturing a full 360-degree view of the quad. So if you fly sideways, it knows what's coming from that side. If you fly down, it knows what's there. Certainly if you fly forward, it's already predicting a path through whatever bramble you're racing through on a skateboard or on a bike to find a navigational path through there. But if you think about that for a second, 6 high-resolution cameras all streaming information back to the central processor. That's a tremendous amount of information that has to be processed by that chipset, and not only process it, but then make predictive assessments, if you will, of the environment to tell the quad where to fly, to tell the motors how to move and get that thing skimming around. So I'm blown away from the engineering perspective on this thing of how smart they've made this product. I called it wicked smart. I know it's a Boston term, but it's wicked smart. And I'm not saying the other quads can't do it, but if you have that Qualcomm chipset in there, that's great. But if you don't have those cameras, you don't have the information you need to make those predictive moves, if you will, in 3D space. So they've really done a great job of taking the sensors, taking the chipset, building it together. And again, if I pick on them a little bit, I could buy a Sony sensor. I could buy those 6 navigation cameras. I could buy the Qualcomm chipset. I could build a breadboard that would stream that video, because that chipset does a lot of the processing to give me HDR video out the back end with amazing results. Where the magic comes in with this quad is the programming. And I'll talk about that next, because you have to be brilliant in writing that algorithm that gets smarter over time about the environment and be able to dodge those obstacles when you're flying. And that's really what this product has in spades, is the fact that they've learned over time, using that neural network inside the product to control it, they've learned over time how to program it to avoid those obstacles. And really, that's the future of everything. When you think about self-driving cars, you've got delivery services now from Amazon, and UPS just got approved the other day. So they're going to be autonomous drones flying all over the place. They can't have a pilot someplace looking at 100 screens trying to land a drone on Rick's front lawn. It has to have some autonomy built in, and to do that, you need machine learning, you need artificial intelligence, you need a really beefy processor inside the unit to process all that data, make the decisions based on the algorithms you've written to avoid those obstacles. These guys have nailed it. So stay tuned, and I'll talk next about the chipset. In this last section, I can't help but get a little bit nerdy, because what got me so excited about this brand new Skydio R2 drone is the tech inside the product. Now, I don't have it in front of me, but I did a ton of research on the technology they're using to build this drone, and I have to tell you, the foundational architecture they've chosen is extremely advanced. And it really comes down to 2 things: the chipset they're using and the software program they put into it to actually accomplish all the magic it can do in the field. You'll find that it's really built for Internet of Things type of activities. Now, you've probably heard that term before, but it's really a leading edge kind of a technology where it's got neural networks built in, it's got artificial intelligence, machine learning, but this chipset does so much more. It does a ton of different functions that really make this quad super special. So it's got edge computing, artificial intelligence engine built in. It's got a CPU, which is an octa-core CPU. It's got a GPU unit in there, which is a graphical processing unit. And finally, it's also got the capabilities to do speech recognition. Now, they haven't enabled anything around that yet, but that's all built into the silicone. But what makes this so special is the fact that the people from Skydio, the programmers, have actually built the intelligence into it to take full advantage of all those features inside the chipset. And it's interesting because when you look up the company on Google, they're not a drone company. They're software developers. So what they've done essentially is taken off-the-shelf components, put them into a really cool looking package, and built wildly expansive software into it to accomplish all this obstacle avoidance and this following capabilities and the autonomous flight. All that stuff is based on the software, which again, they've perfected from their Gen 1 product. So I'm really impressed with the software they built into it. But let's talk about the chipset just briefly, because again, as a nerd, this is the kind of stuff that gets me fired up. So the 2 things we care about in this chipset are the artificial intelligence engine and the CPU and GPU. Now, if you're not familiar with those terms, what artificial intelligence means, or machine learning means, is basically it's a program that gets smarter over time. So it's taking in some variables about its environment, and it's making decisions based on all the inputs it has. Now, in this case, it's gathering data from those 6 high-definition cameras to sort of set up a geospatial environment to know where holes are and where solid objects are. And then the programming takes over to say, okay, number one, we want to follow the holes. We want to avoid the solid objects. Seems simple enough, but it's not, because you can fly in any direction. If you were manually flying it, it would just have to react to what it sees out there as sort of an obstacle avoidance thing. But it's flying itself. So it's not only tracking you to stay on top of you, but it has to know about the environment and make the decision to find the holes. It's going to be like a linebacker. If you're a football player going through the line, your whole job is to find the hole they've opened up for you. That's exactly what this thing does. So the artificial intelligence is based on a neural network. There's a lot of programming involved with that. If you're a nerd like me, you've probably studied things like Caffe, which is now PyTorch, and it's got deep learning frameworks inside of it that actually gather the information. There's profiles they can use, but I'm telling you, this stuff is like futuristic type of thing. This kind of chipset is used in, like I said, self-driving cars and a lot of the autonomous things that are out there. You basically got a flying robot that will lock on you and has the brains through its artificial intelligence to make decisions about finding a hole and not crashing into stuff. That's pretty cool. In addition to that, it's got a combination CPU, GPU. Now, if you don't know what those are, CPU is a pretty common term. It's a central processing unit. You have that in your computer at home, your laptop, your phones all have that in there. That's really the brains of the operation that processes all the information. What really separates it, though, is they've got a separate GPU, which is a graphical processing unit, which allows them to process not only the information from the 6 cameras that are coming in for the crash avoidance and the autonomous flight, but also to process that beautiful video coming back from that 1/2.3 sensor at 100 megabits a second. So it's such a smart box. It's got so much brilliance built into it that you've got this like leading edge, high-tech flying robot that not only delivers beautiful images and video from the front end, but is able to be spatially aware of its environment, find the holes, and not only avoid the stuff that it doesn't want to run into, but at the same time, keep track of you on a motorcycle or a bike screaming through this environment. I just tell you, to me, this is not just a cooler drone. I really think, and I know I'm saying a lot here, this is the next evolution in what we're going to see, because this autonomous flight, this ability to avoid obstacles and track a subject at the same time, a lot of other companies have kind of gotten there with the sensors they've built into the products they've got on the market, but this one is way ahead as far as its obstacle avoidance goes. Now again, I'm speculating a lot here because I don't have it in my hands, but I'm telling you, I know the chipset, I understand what they're doing behind the scenes with the neural networks and the artificial intelligence, and I'm telling you, the programming looks rock solid on this thing. So once I get it in my hands, we're going to take it out in the woods. I'm going to try and crash this thing. I'm going to try and run it smack into a tree while I'm following something, and we'll see how it works. My suspicion is it's going to dodge the tree. And it's not just going to stop as a crash avoidance thing. It's going to find a hole and continue to follow me through that woods. So that'll be really interesting. Now, having said that, I don't think the other companies are sitting on their laurels. I think that DJI has probably got a project somewhere buried deep in the bowels of their labs that does this already. I'm surprised 2 things. I'm surprised, number 1, that they didn't get it out already. And I'm surprised, number 2, of how they're going to get it under $1,000, because the Mavic 2 is a wonderful product. I fly both the Zoom and the Pro. I love them both. Their crash avoidance is absolutely amazing, and their active track is really good as well. But it's not quite as good as this one based on what I've seen so far. So once I get this product in my hands, I'm going to put it up in the air, and I'll do side-by-side comparisons with that and the Evo and the Parrot products, all the products that I own already. But this one really impresses me. So I think there's going to be other technologies coming very quickly, by the way, from other companies that'll do similar things to this. But what it boils down to is any drone company out there today can put one of those Qualcomm QCS 605s in their drone, and they can put a bunch of sensors on it, and they can put it up in the air. At the end of the day, what it comes down to is how brilliant are their programmers? How smart are the people, men and women, that are putting the zeros and ones together that run that program? That's really what it comes down to. How do they anticipate collisions? How do they avoid them? What kind of machine learning are they applying to find those holes to actually fly this thing? This is the first generation of a product that I think is ready for prime time around autonomous flight, and I cannot wait to get my hands on this thing and put it up in the air and try it. All right, the last thing I'll say is, who is this drone made for? Because it is different. It's not the everything drone, right? So I fly a ton of products out there. Typically, I'm flying from a controller, and I care about crash avoidance, and I want the best possible picture. So it doesn't have the best possible picture because there are cameras out there that are way better. You just saw the new Typhoon H3 came out with a Leica camera on it. We've got the Mavic 2 Pro that's got the 1-inch sensor on it. We've got the Inspire 2 that's got gigantic cameras and beautiful cameras on it. So it's not the best image, but it's a fantastic image, 4K 100 megabits a second. It's got autonomy built in, which the other ones don't have. So for somebody that's looking to do sports photography, if you're an active person and you're a surfer, skateboarder, bicycler, you want to chase a car, chase a motorcycle, the autonomy is really the selling point of this. Even though you can fly it with the joysticks and it'll have better crash avoidance than the other drones, I think it's really for somebody looking for a drone that's Probably safer than the others because the crash avoidance or that autonomous flight will prevent you from running into things, maybe a little bit better than the others. But it's really built for somebody that wants to throw the drone up in the air and not have to worry about flying it. Just have them follow you and fly it. You can fly it with your phone. You can fly it with a controller, which just looks to me like exactly like the Paranafi controller. So maybe there's an OEM thing going on there where somebody built that controller and they're both using it. But you get a controller, and then you can also fly it with this brand new technology called a beacon, which looks like a little remote control that you keep on you. And somehow the drone knows either through Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, and I'll have to test all that, where you're standing physically, so it can follow you a little bit further away. So with the phone, you can fly a short distance. With the beacon, you can fly a little further. And with the remote controller, you can fly the full 2.2 miles. So it's up to you how you want to do that. But $9.99 for the drone, and the remotes are a little bit more money if you want to add those in later. I can't wait to get my hands on this drone, and I promise you, the minute it arrives, I'll have it up in the air and I'll be flying it like crazy. I'll compare it to all the other drones we've flown up till now. And the one thing I will do, and I know it's a little bit crazy, but I will do that chicken test where I'm going to fly this thing full speed at a tree, and hopefully it's going to avoid it. I've got my fingers crossed that $1,000 investment won't go crashing into a tree, but based on the tech they've got built into it, my engineering experience and the programming I've done, I trust that these guys have built the best algorithm possible to find the hole and miss the tree. So we'll see what happens when it gets here. I'm also surprised that they did this on their own as a smaller company, because you've got Autel, DJI, Unique out there, which are the big guys in the industry, and they don't have this level of autonomy built in. So I'm a huge fan of small companies doing stuff like this, shaking up the market, because competition is good for all of us. It drives the other guys to advance a little bit more quickly, it lowers prices, and it just keeps everybody honest in the marketplace. So having said that, I wouldn't be shocked at all if you see announcements from those big three with autonomous drones coming very, very soon, because again, I'm sure they've got stuff in development that's ready to go, and you'll probably see some new drones coming from all three of those companies very soon. But anyway, that's it for today. I'm sorry this was a little bit longer clip. You can tell I'm jazzed on this technology. I had to get through it, and I wanted to point out exactly what makes it different than everything else on the market today. And I think they've got a really unique product, an evolutionary product in a lot of ways, and it looks like they've nailed it for autonomous flight. So if you like this clip and you haven't subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button down there. Join the Drone Valley family. I have a ton more stuff coming on all kinds of high-tech products that we're going to be posting. I love feedback, so if you have questions on anything I've covered today, drop them in the comments below. I'll do my best to get back to you as quickly as possible. And you want to stay tuned to the channel because we have the Drone Valley 12 days of Drone Valley Christmas coming up in a couple of weeks, where we, for 12 days, give away cool prizes to you guys with no strings attached. You basically just enter the contest, we pull a name at random, and we'll ship the product to anybody, anywhere in the world, and we don't charge for shipping or anything. It's all free. So if you like that kind of stuff, why not tune in and get some free prizes from the channel? We love doing it. I love Christmas time. I get so excited about it. Anyway, that's it for today. Thanks an awful lot for watching, and until next time, happy flying.